If you are a leader who feels like some of the members of your team might not be living up to their potential, and you're wondering how can you better leverage their neurodivergent strengths, this episode is for you. Before we dive into the episode, I want to ask you a question. Do you feel like your ADHD makes you feel like you can't show up as your full, authentic self at work? If so, I know how that feels. It's exactly why I created the 5 Shifts Masterclass. These are 5 shifts for helping to conquer your ADHD and really show up as your true self at work. In the show notes below, there's a link. You can sign up. It's totally free. I do this because I've been where you are. I know it's not easy, but you're not alone. Not anymore. Welcome to the More Than ADHD Podcast, episode 29. In today's episode, we will talk about how to level up, how to maximize the strengths of you and your team. I'm your host, Ryan Mayer, certified ADHD coach, neuroinclusion consultant, and master facilitator. Here at Ryan Mayer Coaching, we are on a mission. We're on a mission to help more organizations to see the invisible potential, see the invisible risks, and see the invisible opportunities that are right in front of us that are hiding in plain sight. We're so glad you're here. And if this is your first time, make sure that you like and subscribe, and we'd love to have you comment below. Today's question of the day is, do you feel like you're falling short of your potential because of neurodivergent traits? Comment below. I feel like I say this on every single episode, and I might continue to do that. But today is no different because this guest is so special to me. There are so many things that I could say in her introduction, but I'm going to let us get to a lot of the great stuff during our conversation. But here's what I will tell you, just as a teaser. Our guest today has nearly 3 decades of experience working on culture and belonging in a very large organization, and I have the honor and privilege of being part of the big debut, the grand opening of her new branding, this new adventure, coaching and consulting practice called The Leader Within. Great name, by the way. And it is my honor to introduce all of you, listeners and viewers, to my dear friend and fellow coach, Jodi Davidson. Wah, 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 wah. Welcome, Jodi, to the show.
Wah, 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 wah. I am receptive to that welcome. Thank you. And, you said that you were feeling a little bit emotional. And if we can just kick off in that vulnerable space of knowing that I am in transition and it's opening up all of these possibilities. And there's so much freedom and possibility and scariness all at the same time. And to hear about this grand opening, I just need to walk through the door of the storefront that I'm creating, which I really hope, Ryan, can, just like you, reach many, many people to support those maybe getting towards a different place on that good old Maslow's hierarchy, that we move from survival to actually thriving and self-actualization. And what is it we can do to walk that talk for ourselves, right? And to also be in a position to hold the space for us to support other people doing the same. And I think we're going to talk about that a lot in this episode.
We are. And there's so many reasons why I'm excited to have Jodi on the show today. But one of them is to reciprocate, giving her the chance to talk about some of the topics she's so passionate about in the same way that Jodi did for me. So it was less than a year ago that Jodi and I met through one of my clients who works at the organization where she was at. And Jodi and I, when we met, we were fast friends. And I just knew there was going to be something really special from our work that we co-created together. And I can already tell you, Jodi, you talk about hopefully reaching and impacting. You mean continue reaching and impacting, because you have touched the lives of hundreds, probably thousands of people throughout your career. So I'm just so excited for the value that our audience is going to get from you. So speaking of that, I'm wondering, what would be the best things for us to cover during the episode today?
Gosh, I wish that we could bring in virtual guests up to the stage and ask that very important question. What would be in service for your audience to know? And, this morning I was reflecting on what is that? And I believe it's as much about how do we create the systems and the experiences, the lived experiences that help for folks to really be at their best and to contribute most fully and to have fun along the way, right? And that it's about identifying what are the I'll be very transparent. I'm working on an elevator pitch because look, when you're 28 years in one organization and then you're finding your own way, your path, your adventure, I'm realizing that sometimes I was on a podcast episode with another colleague on Friday. And the last question that was asked was, so what's next? And I was yammering all over the place and it wasn't good. And so I reached out to one of my new BFFs. Everybody's a BFF of Jodi, by the way, just like Ryan. And I said, I liked the episode until we got to the end, and that's not going to be great for my branding. So I'm working on that elevator pitch, which as of yesterday has something to do with helping leaders identify their own superpowers so that they can in turn do that for others. And I feel like there's something in that so that we're not looking at, oh, you fatal flaw, that's not how the typical goes. Instead, what if we're playful and we recognize and celebrate, and God love us for not all being the same, because how boring is that,
Seriously.
And if we can go there, then I think we've done something good in our conversation.
I'm so glad that, as always, Jodi, you're leading by example and practicing what you preach. And you're in the right place, because just as I do in my coaching practice, I do on the podcast as well, that we want this to be a place where you can be authentic, transparent, vulnerable. And again, I'm so confident because I just know who you are as a person. You're going to be bringing so much value. And I'm sure that there are guests that are going to listen and would be more than happy to help you tailor that elevator pitch. But I love the idea of leader within and helping people to become the best version of them. And oh my goodness, we're allowed to have fun and playful. I mean, yes, please. Can I have some more?
Yeah. Do we
Seriously.
have any emoticon reactions on this platform that we can then just have all the confetti to say, the more we open up with positivity, the more we open up our ideation for that next right move. And so let us play in our sandboxes together rather than be, I want to say, competitive. This is my observation. When people are feeling less stable, rather than banding together and playing together and doing the good work that generates something unique that could be a value prop for an organization, the competitiveness and the individualism rather than the collectivism gets in the way. So how do we turn that upside down on its head? What are organizations doing to support that sense of stability so that the playing together is something that's possible rather than something that feels like work? What if the things that we do are a flow state, and instead of it feeling like work, we're fulfilling a calling that's because we know we're making a difference in people's lives?
Yes, please. That would be great. And again, just getting back to you being uniquely who you are, that was the thing that struck me maybe the most about you, is that you're genuinely yourself with every person that you encounter. And I thought it was so refreshing to have someone as high up in an organization as you were to be so approachable and warm. And I can remember our friend Josh, who wouldn't mind us mentioning his name, when he told me even about the first phone call he had with you and that you were just willing to have a conversation. And I think that's what it's about. And what came up for me as you were talking about that is psychological safety, because that's something that in my neuroinclusion practice and as I'm working with organizations and teams, I talk a lot about, because you mentioned earlier about Maslow's hierarchy. And as I think back over my experience in my corporate journey, I was actually like actively discouraged to not show my creativity. And I never felt psychologically safe. And because of that, I was always very much defensive, not collaborative. Like I was in survival mode at all times. And I think that that's a very common experience that, of course, gets masked. Like I wasn't telling people that I'm not feeling part of the team. So I know that you brought fun into where you were, but that it led to flow, which then led to results. So I just want to encourage any leaders who are listening that you don't have to be so serious. You can get results by letting people loosen up.
I want to pause for a moment. I feel like it's super important for us to acknowledge the experience that you had and for you to know that you're not alone, because there's something traumatic in that I know that you are releasing. And through the work that you're doing, you're also creating that healing for your clients, and the expression of what we reveal can be healed. And, another one that's coming to mind is, why do I feel like saying this in this moment? I think that it needs to be said, Ryan, that hurt people, and
Mm-hmm.
healed people, heal people, right?
Ooh, I've never heard that second part. Was that a Jodi Davidson original?
No, it's not.
Okay,
It's
and that's okay. I
not.
love it. And I'm going to definitely start using that, because I agree, hurt people, which is why many times I don't take it personally if someone, and it took me a lot of work to get to that point, but realizing, hey, the only reason this person could possibly be this rude is that they've got something else going on, whether it's professionally or personally. But I appreciate you saying that and pausing and calling attention to it, because the healing that I've experienced, like the hurt I experienced, inspired the healing and the service that I bring to the world, where I'm just not afraid anymore, because I spent way too many years not being able to be myself. And I know that there's people out there that are listening or watching this and thinking, yes, that's me. I need help. So you're not alone. You don't have to do this by yourself. And that's why I want to take a minute too to let everyone know. That's why we have the Ryan Mayer Coaching free digital community. You can join that. There's going to be links and information below. And we have offerings at all price points, because we want you to get the help that you need. And it's not about the money. We have free resources. And in fact, I think it makes sense to share in this one, in this moment, that we have goal setting guides and guides for searching for a job that's a good fit. So check out our website, look at the blogs, and just know we're here to help. So, Jodi, I would love to know, what can leaders do to help to encourage this kind of atmosphere in their organizations?
We could go down so many paths around that particular question. I would like to use a framework that aligns with your company's name. Okay.
Oh, all
Is
right.
it
Well, great.
okay? There might be something
Yes.
sticky about that.
Sure.
So,
Let's go.
so let's think about this. So RMC, Ryan Mayer Coaching. When it
Right.
when it comes to what is it that a leader can do, and can we make the distinction between being a manager and a leader, where managers do things right and leaders do the right things. So what we're talking about and why this aligns clearly with the name that of the company that I'm launching, Leader Within, is what is the work that a leader can do to create the psychological safety, which by definition is allowing people to ask questions and make mistakes. So what if mistakes are experiments that we celebrate, and gosh, so long as we don't do the same damn thing over and over again, which is sanity, right? So we learn and we allow and enable that experimentation. So if we go back to RMC, so let's think about this, Ryan. For R, I'm going to say resilience. Have you heard, Ryan, and your listening audience, have you heard of, it's a kind of older work by a person named William Bridges.
Well, I guess, will you tell me what the work is called? And then I can tell you if
It's
I've heard of it.
it's around transition.
Oh, no.
Okay. So this is coming to mind in relation to my experience right in this moment. And I do want to say as a sidebar that just like right now, I had a transition that was imposed on me, not by choice. And I know that is a blessing. And I knew it immediately when I was informed that it is a blessing meant to be. I feel free, etc. And is positioning me to support other people in transition because of my own personal experience. And the same thing for you and your clients as a way to pay it forward. When there's an experience around whether it's ADHD or anything else that we are working through and celebrating simultaneously, then it gives us an opportunity to be in service to others because of that experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I saying about William Bridges? The difference between change, which is the episode, the external condition, and transition is the piece that is happening within ourselves. So back to the leader within. And let's use the definition that we are all leaders instead of thinking that some leader at the top of a friggin' organization chart. And maybe why I was so accessible, regardless of having a VP title, was because I never lived into the idea that hierarchy was something that I wanted to engage around. Because, like I say to so many people, especially around mentoring, which is some of my legacy and thought leadership work, that there's a myth that the mentor is on the top of the mountain and the mentee is, or protege is way down there, and they're supposed to be changing themselves like a pretzel, right? Maneuvering not because of who they are, but because of who that person is that's guiding them. And if we were to say, I'll say it this way, because I always say it in a snarky kind of way with an accent. So here we go. We all put our pants on the same way, right? And so, so I'm digressing for a moment, felt compelled to say that. We all put our pants on the same way. So how do we recognize when it comes to resilience and we're acknowledging the inner work that we're doing, the transition, and the change is always going to be around us. How is it that we're going to recognize that it's a struggle, it's a challenge, it's hard, all of the things? And how do we do that well? Because we're knowing, and I know you're a faith-based person, Ryan, and I'm not here to talk about religion or politics or any of those other things right now. But what I would like for us to know together is that the definition of faith is, and you probably have a very solid definition, mine is that I know that there's some optimism and an expectancy that all is well, despite not knowing how it is going to turn out, and just allowing that process to unfold and knowing that it's okay. And I think that what if as a leader, we know that for ourselves? And are we less frantic in our approach to the way we engage with people and then create that resilience, that muscle of psychological safety, because we're role modeling and we're walking and talking it. And I do want to say for a moment here, I think that we do a disservice. Did you say masking earlier? Yes,
I
you did.
did.
And there's the concept of covering, which is really similar, say maybe the same, that we put on a persona because we're believing that we're hiding the stigmatized parts of ourselves in order to fit in. And
Correct.
if we're, again, I keep thinking to myself, how many years did I bend myself into a pretzel to try to recreate what somebody else was doing, kind of living in an echo chamber? Somebody called it being a parrot. And somewhere along the way, I said, blah, 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 whatever you want to fill in the blanks. I'm not doing that anymore. And it allowed some people to love me more. And quite frankly, some people didn't like me because of my willingness to show up as my true, authentic self. When a leader allows team members to be their true and authentic self, even when they mess up, what is that doing for the sake of the organization and for the sake of the contribution, the engagement level, the retention, the loyalty, and all of those things? Let me pause there. I'm talking too much.
Jodi, thank you for saying that. And in fact, I want to draw attention to something since we talked about the value of being open and vulnerable. There's been a couple times I noticed while you were sharing, you said something to the effect of, I'm rambling or I'm talking too much. And I have a feeling some of our neurodivergent listeners, and even those who might not identify in that way, may say those same kind of things. So I just want to give you the same permission you've given your teams for years to just keep flowing, because this is all value and I'm loving it. So if you're listening to this, drop down in the comments below, put something in there about, do you apologize too much? Because I know a lot of times with my female clients specifically, and I'm going to call everyone out on that, and it's just been the trend I've seen, there's a lot of apologizing. You don't have to apologize for being yourself. And I will comment in here and saying how great this is. And I want to mention something I noticed. William Bridges is talking about transition, and his last name is Bridges, which helps you to get from one side to the other. So
Yeah.
how perfect that Mr. Bridges is talking about transition. And I really loved the distinction you made there. Change being the event, and then transition being our internal state and like how we want to interpret that. I've never thought of it that way, and I really like that because, and I would even take it one step further and say it's also a transformation. It's a transition, but it's a transformation, because I think, like, for example, in your case, you're not just transitioning, you're transforming. I'm envisioning you as like this beautiful butterfly that finally gets to be released and, help others to do the same.
One of the things that I was saying to whoever would listen when I got pretty snarky there at the final stages of, you've been laid off, and I had several weeks of allowing, and I'm grateful for the time that I had to say goodbye and bring things to closure. I started saying, Ryan, you've been kicked out of the nest in this work environment that I knew and loved and helped me raise my children, et cetera, et cetera. I have 3 wonderful children in their 20s, and all they knew was that mom worked at this particular organization. And, I raised them with the help of this company that I still love to this day. What I was saying in a snarky kind of way is, I'll use the same accent as I put my pants on the same way. I would say something to the effect of, I've been kicked out of the nest. But about a week or so in, I started saying, I've been kicked out of the nest. So guess what I was starting to say after that?
So that I can finally spread my wings and fly.
And I like the spread my wings part, which I didn't say, but I did say, I've been kicked out of the nest so I can fly. And
Mm-hmm.
in this moment, the spread my wings feels even more powerful. And think about how that ties to resilience, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Especially,
butterfly, bird, whatever.
yeah. So I feel like a takeaway for everyone is wherever you are in your career or in your life, are you able to spread your wings? Do you feel like you're able to fully be who you are? Because I didn't feel that way. I had to actually shrink to fit in the nest. And
Mm,
we're here to tell you, you don't have to do that.
yeah.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
curious, Ryan, what would you recommend to a leader who would have been a person that wouldn't have forced you to be constricting yourself in that way?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to answer it because, and I may have shared it on other episodes too, but I actually gave them a really good opportunity of what it might look like. And here's what it was. I love presenting in front of audiences, and Jodi has had the chance to see me do that in action. When she brought me into her organization last year for a really powerful kickoff event for the mentoring program that she created and grew and fostered. I love doing that. And so in one of the jobs I had the opportunity to once every couple of months, I would go present to a certain department at the organization. And each of the people who were on my team were all assigned to their various departments to go present to. Most of them didn't like presenting. And when I went to shadow some of them, I could see why. It's because they weren't good at presenting at all. They didn't engage the audience, they didn't make connections. So, anyway, I went to one of my colleagues who really didn't like presenting. She despised it. And I said, hey, your strength is in administrative processing. She was a whiz. She could do things so fast. And that was absolutely my Achilles heel. And everybody kind of knew that. So I said to her, I popped into her office and I said, hey, I have an idea. What if I take all of your department presentations, if you'll just help me to do some literally data entry on to update some of my accounts. And she's like, that's it? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, that's too easy. Let's go. So we did that for a few months. And then word got to leadership about it. And I got called in by the senior director. And he said, what's this I hear about you taking on your colleagues' presentations? And I said, well, it's something called job carving, or job sharing, where I'm doing the things that I do really well, and she's doing the things she does really well, and the stakeholders are all benefiting. It's a win-win-win-win across the board. And he just said, that's not how we do it here. So I appreciate the creativity, but can you please just do your job? And so that just crushed me. Like, he forced me into that mold again. And that's when I knew, like, this isn't going to be the place I want to be.
Thank you for sharing. There's one caveat because it always takes two or more to tango. Yes,
Sure.
unless we tango with ourselves, which we do that too. There is a missing link when it comes to stakeholder engagement and buy-in. And there's who knows if the trajectory of the outcome would it have been any different? Maybe, maybe not. And sometimes we want to ask forgiveness rather than for permission. There are times that informing and engaging and maybe it goes to the collaborating, where if you were to have gone to this person who sounds, maybe I'm biased because I'm hearing your side of the story, um, is it possible that had you and your colleague approached with some sort of a proposal and they felt as though they were part of the decision-making process, it's possible, maybe not probable because of what you're describing and the culture, but it is possible that you might have had a different outcome. We don't know.
We don't know, but I appreciate that perspective. So that was what? Resiliency? Have we gotten?
I think we're blending ourselves, and we don't need to go in any kind of order here. I think kind of going into the collaboration
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And so one of the things that's coming to mind is how many of you out there in RMC listening land have had a performance appraisal experience that you hated?
Oof.
And I would imagine that it could be a lot of people that are raising their virtual hand at this point. Why am I bringing that up? Because there's something about collaboration when it comes to feedback. There's a term 2x2 coaching and feedback, which is where individuals come together on a regular basis, not once a year, not as an exercise, but ongoing. And so productive when I would say to my colleagues and teams, whether they were volunteers that were contributing or direct reports, and meeting regularly in a high touch sort of way, tell me, how are things going for you? What is it that you're finding rewarding? What is it that you're finding challenging? And I think even probably the most important thing is, well, two most important things, if that's possible. One is how novel to ask, how can I support you? And the other is, what recommendations do you have? So if we approach the workplace as though we're victims of our circumstance, whether it's that we see ourselves in a certain kind of light, or it could be related to ADHD or some form of neurodivergence, don't know. But if we see that as a reason for us to show up as a victim, rather than showing up as a way that I have a challenge, but I also have a recommendation, and coming to the table with a solution instead of it being about the problem without the solution.
Right.
I think that's problematic. Yeah. So if we have these performance discussions that are more collaborative, and we'll say co-creative too, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
you tell me, but it's my turn to tell you. And I don't care that I'm 3 levels down in a hierarchy or organization chart. I'm going to not be afraid to tell you what you're doing, good, bad, and ugly, because we are in this together. And I'm going to be transparent with you because you're allowing me to do that.
Exactly.
I feel like that's so important.
I agree. And I would have loved to have had that opportunity. So I think that's beautiful.
How do we
And-
instill that? I think it's we don't know what we don't know until we know it. We don't see it until we see it. And maybe some people that are leaders and they're listening, and maybe they're doing bits and pieces of what we're talking about, try it on for size, this
Yes.
collaborative feedback model, and figure out what is the right cadence for it. I'm not here to prescribe what that frequency is, but what I know is that if I'm showing up for an annual performance appraisal and you're throwing something at me that I did 6 months ago, well, why the hell didn't you tell me back then?
Yeah.
I could have done something
Right.
about it, but now you're going to document me for it. That's not helpful in any way, shape, or form. What other forms of collaboration are, what's coming to mind? Recently, I had dinner with one of my direct reports that had since left the organization. And she moved on to another company, and her boss is not seeing the gifts of what she wants to bring. I
Okay.
think it's really important for us to get clear on our team members' aspirations and do whatever it takes, even if it means that we know down the road we're going to lose that person. And we help them because we're working side by side. And I'm going to say this as well. When people are like, as a VP, were you strategic enough? Maybe you're rolling up your sleeves and being too hands-on and tactical, Jodi, or whatever that is. I was willing to be in the trenches with this individual, saw her gifts and helped her to grow to another department and then out of the organization. And now she's stuck because she doesn't have a boss that's willing to collaborate with her in that way. So how do
And
we do more of that, I think?
well, and I love that you said inviting the guests who are in leadership positions. And I want to make a distinction here too, that I mentioned, or that you mentioned something earlier that made me think of this: leader versus manager. And I loved that quote that you had. But the other that I will say is you can be a leader regardless of where you are in the organization.
Yes.
And so as you're listening to this, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Music, or anywhere where streaming is located, or YouTube, you can let us know, like, what can you do to speak up? Because I was never short on ideas, but I was short on confidence to bring it up, because every time I did, it just got smashed down. So that person who you had that meal with recently was so lucky to have you. And so any leader who's listening right now, have the courage to give the space to say, hey, what ideas do you have? How can we do this? And allow them to give the honest feedback. And I also love how you contrasted like a annual review, which right there, that needs to be fixed, versus a performance conversation, because that automatically implies that this is ongoing. This is a thing that we should be doing more regularly than annually. If any of you are out there and you think you might have ADHD and you're feeling really alone, not only should you join our community, but we also have weekly and bi-weekly group coaching that you can be a part of, where you can realize you don't have to do this by yourself. There are people out there ready to support you. We have hundreds of people who are part of our community. So we'd love to have you check that out. Join the Ryan Mayer coaching community and realize that there's resources available. Oh, we talked about collaboration, co-creation, whatever we want to call it. What about the mindfulness piece?
Okay. So
Let's make it,
good.
we could do it in whatever order we want.
Resilience, collaboration, mindfulness. And I think I want to expand this mindfulness and focus on the idea of self-compassion. Because if we're a leader who takes good care of ourselves, it's filling our own cup so that we can then be present with others, right?
Yes, I
believe
love that
that's
idea.
the case. And so there's some work around what is self-compassion, which is about, first, kindness. Do we treat ourselves the way we would a friend? The next is common humanity, which is recognizing that we are not alone. So how does a leader help their team members when loneliness is at epidemic proportions?
Exactly.
How do we support our team members around that and do that for ourselves as well, to know we are not alone? And then the third aspect of self-compassion is around mindfulness, where we silence ourselves, where we allow the pause practice. And through that stillness, we recognize that we are not that condition. For example, not defined by a riff. I am who I am, who I am.
Yes.
And I happen to be moving forward, But if I wasn't being mindful about the circumstance, I might say, Jodi, I am ashamed of this situation because it is an indication that there's something flawed or something that makes me less than because my situation has changed. So it comes full circle with this being in transition, being in transformation, being mindful because we're settling in and being still with ourselves. So look at that, Ryan. Ryan stands for resilience. Mayer stands for mindfulness. And coaching stands for collaboration. How do you like that?
Yes, and I love it. And I want to give you another one. Riff You're not defined by a reduction in force, because you are resourceful, intentional, and you have fortitude. So you're going to overcome anything that comes your way because you're strong. As expected, this was incredible, and insightful is another I word. I want more people to be able to learn from you. I know you and I are probably going to get some collaboration coming up in the future. Time will tell. But in the meantime, where can people find more about you?
Yeah, so I am putting all of the pieces together. I am findable on LinkedIn. My email I will share is jodi@leaderwithin.net.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Official. That's great.
So, you know, when you got it, you got an email, it makes it official. And let me close with this. If you are a leader and you engage somebody who happens to have ADHD, imagine the empathy and the compassion that you can demonstrate that makes you an even stronger leader because of that lived understanding of being present with that individual, while a mentee or the person on the other end of that circle is gleaning insights. And how altruistic is that for a pay it forward opportunity?
So great. There were so many gems, and I think one of the biggest takeaways for me, and I hope for our listeners too, is that it's okay to play. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to let people be themselves. And that none of us is defined by any labels. In fact, that reminds me to mention our More Than ADHD merchandise launch, to let you know that the reason why we call this podcast the More Than ADHD podcast is because you're so much more than this label. It is part of you. It's not who you are. So thank you all for stopping by. Let us know what we can do to help. You're not alone. And make sure to share this with someone who you think could benefit. Thanks again, Jodi.
Thanks, Ryan.